chairs today. We are here for the Quarterly Planning meeting. Before we get to the speakers, I wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going on with ACOOP. First thing, if you look around, you're probably not going to see Amber. She's actually on maternity leave starting this week, so your point of contact will be either myself or Courtney back there. So let us know if you need anything, as Amber is on maternity leave. On the agenda for today, we've got Mr. John Lewis from the National Weather Service, as well as J.M. Rowe. He's a communications expert. They're going to come talk to us about what they do and give a little information about that. CART, which is the Continuity Assessment Review Team, or Systems Review Team. They're from FEMA. They're actually going to come in May 25 to 21 and basically review our program and our plans. Not every plan, just the DIS plans that they will be reviewing. They want to make sure we're meeting all of the standards. We want to address any deficiencies. It's basically a comprehensive program review. Obviously, from that point, needed, we can make corrections. We are actually right now leading the nation in continuity planning. There is no other state that's doing it at the same level that we are. I know the credit goes to you guys. That's incredible. You're doing a very good job. NLE 2012, has anybody heard anything about that? Yeah. It's actually going to be a cybersecurity exercise, which is really interesting. That will be, you remember the date on that one? You know,
it's in May.
Yeah, mid-May.
Yeah. I'll say the 12th.
Yeah, I think either 15th or 21st. Anyway, it will be a cybersecurity exercise, half-day tabletop, half-day hot wash. We want to test public resiliency. The simulation itself is going to be Little Rock without internet. There will be a cyber pack. We want to test both the private and public sectors. They're both going to be participating. Again, that will be in May. So I look forward to that. It should be a very good, interesting exercise. Finally, the Great Central U.S. Shakeout. We had one last year on April 28th. There were over 3 million participants in that. That will be on February 7th at 10:15 a.m. Again, it's one of those drop, cover, hold on, actual drill, just the Central U.S. If you'd like to participate in that, log on to shakeout.org/Central US. Please do so. Actually, coming up in just a few days, January 23rd, 2012, that will be the bicentennial of the magnitude 7 Madrid earthquake that struck. Actually killed quite a few people. That was a significant event with the Madrid fault line. So we are just about to hit the bicentennial of that. What we'll do now is I'm going to have John Lewis, as I said, with the National Weather Service, present information about what he does. We'll love here. All right, a little bit about John. He actually began his career in the 1980s as a television meteorologist in Sioux City. He joined the National Weather Service in Charleston, West Virginia. It does snow there. There are really no severe storms, quite like we see here. In 1994, he actually came to Arkansas. He's a senior forecaster, office webmaster, gives numerous talks about the weather to all different kinds of groups. He also likes to run 5K races and spend time with his wife for 16 years. So please welcome John Lewis.
And kind of what I wanted to talk about today, or what I was asked to talk about today, was maybe a little bit about what we do at the Weather Service, and kind of look back at 2011, which was a pretty nuts year here in Arkansas. In other words, it was feast or famine. It either rained too much or too little. The agricultural community was affected a lot by what happened in 2011. So I thought I'd start a little bit with kind of what we do at the Weather Service. And you know, if you watch TV, you've probably seen this display come up with the map and the counties that light up and tell you you're under a tornado warning or a severe thunderstorm warning or something like that. That's our primary duty at the Weather Service, is to protect life and property by issuing warnings. And we do that by looking at the radar and saying, okay, here's the severe storm, the storm looks severe to me, and putting out the warning. And what's severe for us is, and you'll get calls, we got a lot of lightning in this storm, where's my warning? What's severe to us is you have to have at least quarter-size hail, 58-mile-an-hour winds, which is strong enough to down trees, or a tornado. That's primarily what we look at. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we're open. Christmas, we're there. If you call our office, you will get somebody on the phone. It doesn't matter what time of day. We work shift work, so I just came off a week of midnights. Worked evenings this week. Next week I'll be working day shifts. That's just how we roll at the Weather Service. If you've never been to our office, we're at the North Little Rock Airport. This is looking above. There's our building next to the runway where you see the planes. My car would be parking lot kind of on the left there, maybe the third one down, the darker colored car. Radar's across the street. So if you're driving along Remount Road, which runs adjacent to the office, you'll see a dome there. We call it the volleyball in the sky. We use that as a landmark to show people how to get to our office. Looking inside the office, this is what you'll see. Got some TV displays there, but more importantly, you'll see workstations, which back in the old days, when I first started at the office, which was in the mid-90s, by the way, you would have the satellite machine would be over here, and the radar would be over. You'd have to walk all over the room just to get to different places, where now everything is co-located in one area. So this is where I sit. I've got 3 monitors on the left, which are graphics displays that I look at. So on the far right, there's a satellite picture I can look at. Maybe in the middle, I've got a radar display. I pretty much can look at anything I want. And also from this workstation, this is where I issue all my warnings. And it takes about 30 seconds to put out a warning. You look at a storm, you go into the software, you'll the software allows you to take a point, put it over the storm, and then maybe go backwards a couple of scans so that the software understands, okay, this is how fast that storm's moving. Okay. Then you hit a little, and then you take a little box out in front of the storm and say, okay, this is the direction the storm's moving. This is where the warning is going to be. Hit go, and it'll pump out a text warning that I send out. And again, that takes about 30 seconds to do. And the text workstation would be the one on the far right. That's where I would actually issue the warning. All right, as far as 2011, that's a little bit about what we do as far as day to day. 2011, like I was telling you before, it was feast or famine. We got rain sometimes it wouldn't rain. It was hot at times. If you remember the summer of 2010 and 2011, it was about as hot. The year started with actually widespread drought conditions. We had a lot of drought in 2010. That continued into 2011. The forecast for last winter was for below normal precipitation. That's what we got. So that's the way it started. And then lo and behold, we get in April and May, and not only did it rain, it didn't stop raining. We got a tremendous amount of rain. Flooding along the White River, which lasted for about a month. Nobody could plant any crops. Then the White River recedes as we head into the summer. People could now plant, but now it doesn't rain at all, which doesn't help. And then most recently in November, December, we weren't really sure how we were going to end the year. Is it going to be above normal or below normal as far as rain? We ended up with more rain than we needed, and I'll show you that in just a second. But this is where we were in January as far as drought across the state. And pretty much anywhere from severe to extreme drought over about the southeast half of the state. Things weren't looking good. On these graphics, you're looking at soil moisture across the state. And anything below 30 would be below normal, or below average. So at the end of 2010 in November, you're looking at values kind of close to normal, but by the time you get into January 13th of 11, much of the southeast half, you're seeing like values of 5, which is very dry. So drought conditions going on there. Wintertime precip, not real good. Oh, by winter, as far as climatological winter, we're talking December, January, February is what we're looking at as far as wintertime. And over on the right would be the overall for the winter as far as where we ended up. So below normal, a lot of minuses there, didn't really get much precip. And so you're asking me, but John, what about all the snow we had last winter? How can you have below normal precip when we got all the snow? I don't understand. And the answer to that is, if you take the snow that's up there, usually in Arkansas, it's 1 inch of water gives you 10 inches of snow, all right? And in typical January, you'd need 4 inches of water would be normal precipitation. So if it's a 10-to-1 ratio, if 4 inches of water is normal, you would need 40 inches of snow to make it happen. Well, we didn't get 40 inches of snow, but during this particular event, we got 6 to 8, which here in Little Rock, we get about 5 to 6 inches of snow a year, so this was a pretty big event. One of the reasons we got so cold and with a lot of snow last year, and the reason we ended up with below normal precipitation, I'm going to throw a little science section out, had to do with what we call the Arctic oscillation. And we're looking at how pressures vary from the North Pole to our part of the world, the mid-latitudes, right? So in the last winter, 2010, 2011, over the North Pole, the pressures were high. And down in this part of the world, the pressures were low. And it created a strongly negative AO index. And you're looking at that going, okay, I don't understand that. Well, here's the globe. Go to the North Pole, there's your high pressure. Low pressure down toward where we live. And what that tends to do is it slows down the westerlies over Canada. Weather goes from west to east. When you have this kind of setup, those westerlies slow down. So you've got all that cold air up in Canada. If the westerlies are strong, it bottles up all that cold air over Canada and it can't get down here. That's what's happening this winter. Okay, this winter it's exactly reversed. But last winter, weak westerlies, not bottling up the cold air, and here it comes. So we get all this cold air coming down in this direction. Well, as long as we're getting all this cold air, all the moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, all the moisture not coming our way. So we end up with, not a lot of liquid. A lot of cold air, but not a lot of liquid. And that was the setup. So if you were to go online and you went to Google and you typed in Arctic Oscillation Index, this is pretty much what you would see. It's a little graph showing you the 0 would be kind of neutral, and then everything below that would be negative, everything above that would be positive. Well, as you can see, heading into December and January of last year, everything was pretty much negative. If I'm making a forecast, by the way, and for the next 7 days, and I'm looking at models, forecast models, and they're saying it's going to get cold, this is one of the first things I'll look at, is this. If it's showing negative, or it shows it trending negative, that gives me more confidence that the cold air is coming. If I don't see negative, then I question it. Did a little study back in 2005, when we had the drought of 2005, as far as rain in Arkansas. Sometimes we get a lot of rain, sometimes we don't. Why is that? One of the things we looked at was the AO. And what we found was, if the AO tends to go positive, we end up with more rain, more precipitation. If it goes negative, we don't. So here's a few cases of that. As I mentioned before, in 2005, we had the drought conditions going on. Well, it was negative during that time for much of that period. In 2008, when we were very wet, had a lot of tornadoes, including a 122-mile track tornado across northern Arkansas. We were positive during that time. 01 and 02, also a lot of rain, and we were positive. If you were to trace it out over time, the AO would be in blue, and the precip would be in brown, and this is since 1950. The trends kind of fit. As the AO goes up, so does the precip. As the AO goes down, we tend to rain. Well, so we're in the winter of last year. The AO is pretty much negative. We're snowing, but as far as the water that's there, there's not that much. And then all of a sudden, in February and on into March, we start going positive. Uh-oh. So I'm giving talks to the Agricultural Board has a quarterly meeting for the state. And so I'm in there, and they want to know, John, is this drought going to continue? So I'm looking at the AO, and I'm noticing it's going positive. And so my message to them is, I think we may turn it around. It looks like things may break heading into the spring, given that the AO is going positive. If you look at it by numbers, there's 2011 on the bottom. Those little red numbers, you can see pluses, plus 158, plus 142, plus 228. So everything's looking positive as far as the AO goes, heading into the spring of 2011. So it's looking up that things are going to change. And they did. So we get into April. This is percent of normal rainfall in 2011. And the blue colors, at least the dark blue colors across Arkansas, would be 200% above normal rainfall. So in April, if you're supposed to get 4 inches of rain, we got more like 8 or 10 or more than that. And these are the actual numbers. Matter of fact, up at Fayetteville and Harrison, they got 14 and 15 inches of rain in April of 2011. Here in Little Rock, we got about 7. Pine Bluff had 13, so well above normal. And the soil moisture thing, remember the 30 is normal. So early April, not looking so good on the left. Most of the values below 30. By the time you get to the right, look at all the 90s across northern Arkansas. Very wet, very moist, a lot of rain. Things are changing. And then we get into May and there's more rain, above normal. 150%, 200% of normal in May as well. And looking at the numbers here in Little Rock, another 11 inches of rain on top of the 7 inches of rain we had in April. So we got 18 inches in 2 months. That's a lot of rain. Matter of fact, if you took Fayetteville and Harrison in that 2-month period, they had more rain in that 2-month period than Texarkana had all year through October. And so here's the numbers for those 2 sites. Fayetteville and Harrison, about 25 inches. Texarkana was 22. By the way, Texarkana ended the year 18 inches below normal, so they still had drought there at the end of the year. In the Southwest, we made a drive, my wife and I, to East Texas in September. And I don't ever remember seeing that many hay trucks in my life. Coming from Arkansas and going to Texas. It's not raining down there. You can't grow hay, you gotta get it somewhere. So they were shipping it down to Texas. One of the big events as far as flooding, as far as all the rain happened, I was at work this night. This was April 30th and May the 1st. Front comes down, stalls right over central Arkansas, and you get this line of rain. Didn't quite get to downtown Little Rock, but up at North Little Rock, which is where we work, we had plenty of rain that night. Like 8 inches of rain in a 4-hour period is what fell. 8.7 at Morgan, another 6.5 at Cabot. It was a pretty big night for rain. Flash flooding in a lot of places in central Arkansas during that particular event. By the way, by the time we got to the end of May, with all the rain, that drought that we had at the beginning of the year is pretty much over. It's over southern Arkansas. That's it. Had a lot of flooding in April and May. Looking at the White River, farmers can't plant. Pretty good reason for that. I'm going to look at areas around Des Arc. This is Des Arc. It's underwater. All the streets are underwater. The White River is overflowed. There's I-40. That's underwater for the first time, I think, ever, right? Wife and I came back from Memphis in May. If you like barbecue, try that. It's good. But coming back from Memphis in May, got off of Interstate 40 to go north on 33, and just can't. Guy's launching his boat from there, and on 33. Flooding along the White River was historic. In 08, it was bad. It was bad enough if you remember 08. I know you do. In 11, it was even worse. The R means record. So at Corning, up in northeast Arkansas, along the Black River, they had 15.92 was the crest in 2008, and last year it was 18 feet, so it shattered the record. And at Des Arc, they got to what, 33, almost 34 feet in 2008, and they're almost 40 feet in 2011. A lot of flooding. La Nina is cooler than normal water in the equatorial Pacific. If you're doing long-range forecasting, that's one pattern to look at to decide what you're going to do with the forecast in the coming year. Much of last year we had La Nina conditions across the state. Here's a little graph showing it. So you're in the minus numbers, which means cooler than normal water. Summer of 2010 into the spring of 2011, still La Nina. Little study done back in the late 90s about La Nina in spring. And she was at Purdue University. And what she found was when you got La Nina, usually the severe weather season amps up more quickly in this part of the world, and you end up with more severe weather than normal with La Nina. So here's typical winter. Subtropical jet with all the warmth and moisture to the south of Arkansas. Cold air sometimes makes it here, sometimes doesn't. But in her study, that jet, the subtropical jet, runs farther to the north, so it collides more with that cold air. When you get cold and warm colliding like that, more severe weather is what she was getting at. Biggest tornado outbreaks we've had in Arkansas have occurred during La Nina years. So in '99, which was the biggest year, we had 107 tornadoes. That was a La Nina year. 2008 was another La Nina year with 81. 2011 we had 75 tornadoes, which was the fourth most active year, and that was a La Nina year. These are the stats for 2011, just to show you how busy it got in April and May. Not only did it rain, look at all of the severe weather that we had. We had 75 tornadoes for the entire year, but 67 of them occurred in April and May. We had 12 tornado fatalities. We had 17 flash flood deaths. 17 of the 18 for the entire year occurred in April and May. It was a very busy period. It all pretty much started on April the 15th. This is in the middle of the night, 2 in the morning. It comes into the Little Rock area. We call this a bow echo. Looks like a backward sea sweeping east across the state. Why does it have that shape? Why does it look like a backward sea? Because it's got a lot of wind behind it. There's a lot of wind punching its way through and creating that shape. How much wind? 60 to 80 mile an hour winds. Isolated tornadoes along the leading edge. I was at home during this event. I was asleep. The alarms went off. The sirens went off. I got up, turned to my wife, got to go in her spot. Couldn't get her out of bed. No, not going to do it. Then she heard the hail start hitting the windows, and she ran in the other room. She says, "There's hail hitting the windows." I said, "I know. I'm trying to get you out of bed 15 minutes ago." Didn't end up getting a tornado at home, but we did have a few locally. That particular event was responsible for 7 deaths across the state, 40,000 power outages, 3 children, and this was in the middle of the night. Trees falling on houses was the main cause. One of the bigger tornadoes last year was the Bologna, a tornado on April 25th. This is you're looking at reflectivity. You've heard of a hook echo. You've heard hook echo referred to. And we're looking down on this part of the storm. You see the hook down there. And what I want to point your attention to is this thing right here, this little white pink area at the end of the hook. That's called a debris bowl. Okay, if you're watching radar, if I'm at work and I'm looking at radar, and I've got a tornado warning out, and I can see it on radar with velocities, but I start seeing a debris ball like that, that tells me there's something on the ground, because what the radar is hitting there are pieces of roof, trees, whatever the tornado is hitting is what's creating that debris ball. So I am 100% confident that there's a tornado on the ground at that point when I'm seeing that. At that point, when the forecaster saw that, he put out a tornado emergency for Bologna because he knew that something was coming. This is what it looks like from a velocity standpoint, which is a little different. What you're looking at, if the radar's down here, red colors, yellow colors would be winds blowing away from the radar, and blue colors would be toward the radar. So here we have toward and away, toward and away, toward and away. So you can see the rotation there very easily on the radar. It sticks out like a sore thumb, heading to Mayflower and heading right toward Bologna. I mean, right at it. It didn't end up being as big as we thought. The initial reports that we got were Bologna is gone. It's gone. There's nothing left of Bologna. When we ended up going up there and surveying the area after the storm, this is mostly what we saw. There was pretty extensive structural damage, but not houses leveled, which you would typically see with a bigger tornado. And when you're talking bigger, we're talking EF3, EF4. We've only had one F5 in state history, and that was back in 1929, very rare. Okay, so you're getting into EF1, EF2 damage here. First thing to ever go on a house is usually the roof, and then it's the outer walls. First it's the roof, then it's the outer walls. So you hear the rule about go to the lowest floor, away from windows. That's why. Lowest floor, get away from the roof. Interior room, that's because the outer walls are going to go first. And in most cases, by the time the inner walls are affected, the tornado's already gone. It's already moved past. In most cases, you're going to be safe here. I will tell you, though, as a word of caution, when you get into bigger tornadoes, when you get into the EF4s and the EF5s, and your house is completely wiped off its foundation, there's not too much you can do if you're in that house. May 25th, same thing at Clarksville. This is, you probably remember the town of Denning mentioned back in May. This was around the midnight hour. Tornado swept through Denning. Same setup here. You've got actually two tornadoes going on. This was the first one. So you see the radar is we're looking at Fort Smith's radar, which is back here. But you see winds blowing away from the radar in yellow and toward the radar in blue. So there's one. And here's another one getting started up around Clarksville. And that moved off to the northeast. We had two, it was an EF3 and an EF4 tornado that we had during those early morning hours. Biggest tornado of last year was and we're going out of Arkansas here for this, was up in Joplin. This was May the 22nd. EF5 of that. There are no bigger tornadoes as far as the rating system goes. Doesn't get any bigger than that. Now here's the difference between the picture I showed you with Bologna and the Joplin tornado. Bologna, you still saw water. You don't see that here. It's just rubble everywhere. Okay. 87% of homes up in July, this was after the fact, we did a little study, 87% of homes in Joplin do not have basements. So if you're in that house and you get a tornado that big, what are you going to do? Not too much. The stunning thing with the Joplin tornado, which they're doing studies on it right now, is when you look at the biggest tornadoes in history on that list, as far as death toll, 9 of the 10 are before Doppler radar. 9 of the 10 are before we ever started issuing warnings. And here we get into last year, we have the Doppler radar and the technology's there, and we have the warnings there, and yet this happens. Had a lot of people scratching their heads. A lot of studies going on, and a lot of it has to do with how do people react when warnings are issued? What do they do when warnings are issued? Do they take shelter now? Do they wait? Do they wait to see what happens? Where is it? I don't see it yet, so I'm not going to do anything. That's what they're looking at right now. All right, so we get beyond April and May. We go into the summer of last year. Big area of high pressure over us. High pressure is like an upside down bowl of heat. Doesn't allow storms to form. And it was hot and it didn't rain for much of the summer. 4,800 degree days in Fort Smith. As you headed to the west, it was more than that. 1,600 degree days at Oklahoma City. All-time record highs were set here in Little Rock. We had 114 degrees on the 3rd of August. Fortunately, I was on midnight shift that day, so I slept through most of it. Fort Smith, 115 degrees on that day. And really what caused this was it was pretty moist through noon or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then all of a sudden, drier air from aloft mixed to the ground. The dew points dropped. Drier air heats up more rapidly than moist air. So we got that drier air in and the temperatures went up. Tropics sometimes help us out when we're in a drought. So summertime, it's not raining, it's hot. Maybe the tropics will give us some rain. Not last year. It's close. This was Tropical Storm Lee in early September. You can see the rain swath with that. The yellows and the reds moving up through Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, but away from Arkansas, so we tended to miss out on the tropics. June through October, not looking so good in Arkansas. Look at the rainfall deficits in the middle there. Texarkana and El Dorado, during that stretch, summer into the early fall, 13 and 14 inches below normal just then. Little Rock, 7 inches below normal. So look, we started with drought, we got rid of the drought in April and May, and it's coming back again because it's not raining again. So May the 2nd, soil moistures looked more than adequate across northern Arkansas, way above 30. By the end of July, those green colors are gone. Soil is drying out again. And here's the drought heading into October. Much of western Arkansas back in a drought. And it was worse in southwest Arkansas. Admittedly, you had severe to exceptional. Exceptional is the worst drought you can have down toward Texarkana and El Dorado, about 4 counties in the southwest. So we get to the end of the year, and the AO goes positive again. The AO was negative through much of the summer. Now it's positive again. Doing some studies, and they found that going into November and December, the sunspot activity was a lot. It was near record high sunspot activity. And researchers are trying to take that sunspot activity and put it together with the behavior of the AO. What they're finding it is that as the sunspot activity increases, the AO goes more positive. As it decreases, in the last 2 winters when we had all the snow and cold and the AO was negative, there was hardly any sunspot activity. Well, sunspot activity is picking up in November and December. The AO is increasing. We have these fronts coming in, and it rains a lot again. We had 18 inches of rain in 1 month in Little Rock. 1 month. A foot of rain anywhere from Mena to Mount Ida, Little Rock, Russellville, West Memphis, Jonesboro, central third of the state. While we got the rain, Texarkana only got like 5 inches. That's 13 inches above normal here locally in a 1 month period. That's ridiculous. It's a lot of rain. And by the end of December, the drought's gone again, magically, and only in the southwest. This is pretty. This to me is when I look at this, it's startling because by the end of last year, Little Rock was 10.5 inches above normal on rain, about 60 inches for the year. Get in a car, drive 2 hours into the southwest, on Interstate 30, and they're almost 20 inches below normal. That's a 30-inch difference in a 2-hour drive. And if you're wondering what this drought's going to do, at least through March, And if you look at the pattern for the next year, it looks like we're looking at drought conditions over the southeast United States and growing and expanding over the southwest, with maybe a little dent here in the middle of the country. Not to say that the drought won't redevelop over the southern Arkansas, because the last 2 years there's 3 feet below normal rain anyway down there. But it's looking like if we have drought, widespread drought in Arkansas, it's going to be mainly the southern counties in the upcoming year. Those are the areas that are most prone to drought. A lot of this stuff's on our website. I would not expect you to remember this address, so just Google National Weather Service Little Rock. There it'll be. And that's it. Appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I presented? The AO? Yes.
What can we expect this summer? Another hot one?
What's that? Oh, this summer? If everything comes into play like it's supposed to, and we're still, the La Nina that we have now will weaken somewhat. But it looks to me like the AO is going to trend more toward positive. So what that drought outlook was showing with the southeast, probably the most likely, if you're in Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, I would say that drought looks fairly likely over there, and a lot of that's going to hinge on what the tropical season does. You get a tropical storm through there, that'll wipe a lot of that out. But that would be one area, and then in the southwest, not so much in the middle of the country. So I would say right now, at least average rainfall, and not as hot as we were in the last 2 summers. Not as hot. So, yes.
What about snow and ice this winter?
You know what? If we don't get this AO going more negative, I'm not going to have too much of that. Not going to have too much of that. I will say that lately the AO has trended more neutral. It is trying to head more into negative territory, and I guess you saw the snow over Seattle, right? They are getting more snow over the Dakotas now and the Great Lakes, so it is trying to move its way to the south. The other thing to watch is Alaska. Alaska's been very, very cold. Fairbanks, Alaska has been ridiculously cold, 20 to 30 degrees below normal in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And a lot of times you see that cold air get build up in Alaska, eventually it's going to make it down here. But as we head later and later into the season, the likelihood of it coming and staying is not good. It'll be one of those, here it comes, oh, it's terrible, 3 days later it's gone, and it's a memory. Does this mean we're not going to get any more snow or ice? We might, but it's not going to last.
Is it typical for the AO to change quickly? It just seems like over the last year, maybe back and forth every 4 times.
Yeah, the problem with the AO in long-term forecasting is it does oscillate more than, let's say, La Nina, El Nino. So if I'm a long-term forecaster, I really can't base too much on the AO. I have to stick more with the El Nino, La Nina, because that is a more steady state. They fluctuate too, but not on the order of what the AO does. Now, what the climate prediction did this year, which I have not seen before in the past, when they put out their forecast for the winter, in the last 2 years, they said, colder than normal here, got to get more precip. That's it. End of discussion. Well, the problem here in Arkansas is we were supposed to be warmer than normal here last year, given La Nina and the forecast and so on and so forth. I didn't see that. It was pretty cold here last winter. We got a lot of snow, right? So what they did, and the same thing happened the year before that. So what they did this year is they said, okay, La Nina, here's our forecast, but there's a wild card. And the wild card is the AO. The AO could totally screw this up, which it's the only place it's not coming to fruition is over the north, toward the Dakotas, because they were supposed to have a real cold and snowy year. They haven't. Why? Because the AO has been so positive. That's good news for us, because last year they had so much snow and ice, it got so cold that when we got in the spring, all that water, all that snow and ice melted, went into the Mississippi, right? White River gets high, it can't empty in the Mississippi because it's so high. If they don't end up with all the snow up there this year, which they haven't, we're not gonna have that problem this spring. So even if we do end up with a bunch of rain, White River's gonna be able to drain more readily. So that's good.
There's nothing that tells when the AO is switching other than the actual switches.
Yeah, AO would be on the order of weeks when it switches. La Nina, El Nino would be on the order of months. That's why they tend to go with that for long range than the AO. But they can throw it in as a wild card and do it that way to kind of explain what's going on. What else? All right, appreciate it.
What we've got next is Mr. J.M. Rowe. He's going to come talk about emergency communications, a little bit about his background. He's got extensive experience in all kinds of emergency response. He retired after 23 years as a paramedic. He's actually the operations officer for the Hot Springs, Garland County. He was the operations officer for the Garland County Ambulance Service. He is the ARRL, which is the Amateur Radio Relay League Emergency Coordinator for Garland County. He's a certified COM-L, which is a communications unit leader. He's helped and designed and implemented the Arkansas Department of Health Emergency Operations Communications Center. And he is an FCC licensed extra class amateur radio operator. Please welcome Mr. J.M. Rowe.
I'm not for sure of my audience here. How many of you are state people? Everybody. Okay, that makes it easy. What we're going to talk about is Mars and amateur radio and what we can do for you. I say this from a nervous, all my eggs are in one basket called A-Win perspective. So here we go. Some of you are old enough to remember Mars from the Vietnam era. A bigger part of you are not, just look around. The Mars mission has changed. Back in the good old days, the concept of Mars was that it allowed contact from a military member overseas to his loved ones back here in the United States. Well, the concept of the internet and everybody's got a cell phone or a satellite telephone, that mission has gone away pretty much. So a Marsgram really is just, there's no purpose for it anymore. So they decided, Mars did, that the Army is too valuable a resource to just throw away. So we've got to change and repurpose. And that's what happened. Now, there's two different kinds of Mars licenses. There's an individual license. My individual license is Alpha Alpha Romeo 6 Romeo Whiskey, which is a lot to say. But that's not what we want to talk about. We want to talk about another kind of license, which is Mars issues licenses to individual agencies. Adam has a license. The Highway Department has a license. The Arkansas Department of Health has a license. Whoever we can think of that had a communications mission, we got licenses for. Also, they're available for county agencies as well, by the way, I forgot to tell you that. Now, the Mars agency licenses, there's not a ham radio license requirement like it is for an individual license. And that means that anybody can talk on the radio, and what we're suggesting now is, and we train for people that are already working your radios to talk on the Mars radio, so that you can just continue on and you can continue your operations. How does that work good in? The rules are different for Mars because of the frequencies that are using are different, so we don't have to bother with the FCC rules, which can sometimes be onerous, and they don't exactly, the FCC is kind of like a glacier moving, and when something new comes along, we adopt it very quickly in Mars. The benefit of Mars is that it's HF, or high frequency. When we say high frequency, that means low numbers in reality. And that means that there's not any infrastructure. With AWIN, for instance, is everybody familiar with AWIN, Arkansas Wireless Information Network? That's what the state police is on. Everybody's on AWIN. Now, there's a switch in this building. There's a switch over at state police headquarters. There's a switch at Adam. Those three switches, every time anybody in the state of Arkansas keys up a radio, that signal goes through one of those switches depending on where that person is. Now, last year, 2 years ago, the switch over at the state police, the power supply got hit by lightning. So the south half of the state broke. And Mars doesn't do that. And so we can provide both data and voice over long distances, over the horizon. We use a system called WinLink, which allows us to send emails over the air, and it's very robust. It's decentralized. The servers are spread all over the world, by the way, and there is no single point of failure. Not any way to break, unless the internet itself, which we believe is practically impossible, unless the internet itself breaks, then WinLink will be working. Now, what's cool about that is we don't care if the internet is there in any case, because we can do peer-to-peer stuff. We can encrypt a message in Mars, which is not possible in ham radio, by the way. So we can get around those pesky HIPAA rules. And because it's digital, it's 100% sure that it's going to be right when it gets to the other end. So we provide 3 different communication paths. You can have from agency to agency. The Game and Fish Commission wants to send a message to Adam, or the Highway Department wants to talk to the Game and Fish Commission, or whatever it is. We can provide a county to agency. If the health department needs to talk to Garland County, we can do that. Or if Garland County needs to talk to Montgomery County, we can do that. So here's where I was alluding to a while ago. There's a program we use called RMS Express, and that provides a way to do a peer-to-peer. You just make contact with a station that you're wanting to talk to and send your emails and your pictures, what you want to do, and it just goes. Something happened in NLE 2011 that had never been done before. Are you guys familiar with EMAC, Emergency Management Assistance Compact? EMAC says Texas has got a resource that Arkansas needs. Arkansas pays for that resource to come and take care of whatever the problem is. And that's the way it works, and these people are maybe state employees or maybe some resource that Texas has. Well, Mars operators had never been deployed across the state line, not even in Hurricane Katrina. It had always been just a volunteer thing. Texas happens to have Mars as a part of what's called the Texas Military Forces, part of their standing army. Texas has got its own standing army.
Of course they do.
And so I'm not invading those guys at all. But, in any case, we were able to ask for the resource of a Mars team, and they showed up. This is the very first time ever that had ever been done, and that was a big deal. Now, I gave you a partial list a while ago. DIS is the ESF2, which is communications lead here for the state of Arkansas. Adam is using Mars, the state police, Department of Health, Highway Department, Department of Education. Now, why is the Department of Education in there? Because they run AETN. So they've got all the towers. Game and Fish Commission, Forestry Commission, and the Department of Corrections. These counties also have Mars licenses. And Washington, Johnson County specifically, and Garland County as well, are very active in Mars and have bought a bunch of equipment and deployed. Now, I want to change my hat just a minute. If you you've got a bunch of hams you can depend on, you guys can take a nap. But if not, let's talk about how we can either find them or grow them, one or the other. If you're looking to include ham radio operators in your continuity of operations plan, here's the URL for you to see where they live in your community. Okay, writing it down. This is what you'll come to when you find that, and you can then put in. What's cool is here is you can put in Arkansas or a zip code, and it'll come to it. I was teasing you about that. All you got to do is just go to the FCC.gov website, and it's there. This is what you get when you search Montgomery County. I happen to know that out of that list, there are 4 people alive. The rest of them are dead. Now the reason that is because a license doesn't expire for 10 years. And people apparently go to Montgomery County to die. So, if it happens that in your community there's not a bunch of ham radio operators that are available, or they're inappropriate for you to use, whatever the story is, then if you'll talk to us, we'll see about helping. If you'll sponsor a class, we'll come help. And you know, how do you get these folks to show up? And the easiest thing to do is to feed them. I swear. And I like this. So, care and feeding your ham radio operators. Say it with me. Train them, utilize them, train them, utilize them, because they want to be used. They really do. They like being in the mix. Now, here's our contact information. I will leave that up. You can write that down if you're interested. If your agency was not on that list and you feel that you need to have a Mars license, you can contact me. We'll see about doing that. I am the interoperability officer for the state of Arkansas for Mars, and I'm also the ESF2 liaison to Mars and RACES, which is Radio Amateur Civil Emergency Service. So if I can do you some good and you don't call me, it's your fault. There you go. Any questions?
I've got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
On your Mars WinLink,
Yep.
is that correct? That's where you can send data? Am I
Yeah.
getting that correct?
An email.
How secure is that?
We can encrypt it to whatever level you care for it to be. It can be, the message itself, it goes over what's called backdoor, which you got to be equipped to receive it and decode it, and then if you've encrypted it, you have to break that as well. So, you know, I would not send over the current list of individuals that are spies in Europe, but I would not be concerned about sending patient information. Does that make sense? There's some things I wouldn't send, but there's other things that I would think, well, hell, who's going to see this? So there you go. It's pretty secure,
Okay.
pretty good privacy, I guess.
That's a lot of employee data, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, I wouldn't hesitate to send that at all.
Social security number.
Yeah, no worries there. What else? Yes, sir.
To get an amateur radio license, how much does that typically cost?
The cost?
Yes.
The cost is $15 to take the test. And what's cool is that if you've studied, there's 3 different levels of license. There's technician, general, and then extra. If on a day you can take all 3, if you pass the tech, you can then take the general, and then you can take the extra. There's no extra charge for taking those extra tests if you have studied. People do that every now and again.
And is the study material available online as well?
There's practice tests online even, as a matter of fact, and what you do is you go on there and it asks you a question and you give it an answer, and it tells you if you missed it or not. When you get to the 75%, where you're making 75%, well then you pass the test. That's all there is to it. There's a chimney crickets, let me think. There's a 500 question pool. They give you the exact question and the exact answers that's on your test. Out of that 500 question pool, you're going to see 35 questions for your first test for the technician. You don't know what they are. They're selected out of the groups. It's a random thing. Then the next test is 50 questions, and then the third test is 50 questions as well. It's not the same pool when the pools get bigger. Yes, sir.
Equipment cost.
Equipment costs is, you know what, I bought a portable radio that, this radio does a lot of stuff. And I spent $119 for it.
So existing equipment might be workable, but if you've
Sure.
got something existing,
Yep,
a radio system already set up.
you bet. The entire state of Arkansas, there's nowhere, very few places that you can't go and talk to a ham radio operator right now. The repeaters are everywhere. It's a big deal. And that's not the HF stuff. HF stuff is for sure, you know, talk worldwide. Not any problem. This building's got an antenna on it, as a matter of fact. This building is fixed to do the WinLink stuff. I did it from here during NLE 11. Sure enough.
Just to say, we at the Weather Service rely heavily on ham radio reports. You know, a lot of times if we have a severe weather event coming, there's a person we'll call, a main person that says, okay, can you all be here at like 3 o'clock this afternoon? Because that's when we expect the severe storms to fire. They'll fire up the network, and then we'll get reports from the outside. And as he said, they're more than willing to come in. A lot of times we don't even have to call them; they'll call us. What time do we need to be here today? They'll look at this. They'll look at the situation. They know that there's severe weather coming, and they'll call, and they want to be a part of it. So
This is the way that a lot of guys that would like to do public service or volunteer in some fashion, ham radio is something that they can do. You know, maybe they're not in the best physical shape, so they can't be a reserve deputy, for instance, or something along that line. They can be a ham radio operator. They can do stuff, and that's how you choose to do your public service. So there you go. Well, I'd encourage any and all of you that are interested in public service to look at ham radio. Look at being a Mars operator. See if we can't get you involved in something like that. There are, to answer your question about equipment costs, yeah, the little bitty bitty radios that are made in China are very inexpensive. They seem to be, from what we can tell right now, they're fairly well made. I'm fairly happy with them. So far, so good. But they, on the other end of that, you can spend thousands of dollars. No doubt. Just as much money, ever how much money you got, we can spend it, I promise. And I'll be happy to help. Who else? Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Just kind of a note here, your agenda's probably said John Robinson was going to speak today, but he actually had emergency surgery. That's why Mr. Lewis here today, so I wish him the best. It also says we're going to conclude at 2:30, but we're getting done a little bit early. That is all the information we had for you today. Does anybody have any questions about anything ACOOP wise that you'd like me to answer while we're here? If you do, I'm sure you know how to get a hold of us, dis@arkansas.gov. Call either me or Courtney. We will be available to help you out. Like I said, Amber is on maternity leave, so just feel free to ask away. Thank you guys for coming out today. Thanks, Jay and John. Great presentations and a lot of interesting information there, so thank you.